So I'll get right on into the lecture of the morning, which is a partial group discussion. And what does the time say? How long do I have? Until 10:30? Is that what it says? Does anybody have one of those? Okay, that's it. So I just have 10:30. Right. All right. Now, I will try to bring up something to work with here. Okay, MBR. That's it. Okay. Oh, I have absolutely more than I can ever do in this amount of time. So I'm going to talk very fast. Ready? All right, here. No, I won't do that anymore. I won't talk fast. I will simply say a few pithy things. Okay. Now, Master DK is marvelous on the discussion. Right. All right. It'll come up before long. It'll come up, yes. Warming up. I'm warming up too. All right. We're going to begin with the definition of the intuition. And some of you, how many of you read the marvelous book, Glamour, A World Problem? Okay, so good. So you know that in the beginning of the book, he really spends a few pages discussing what the intuition is and what it isn't. So when we're thinking about how to bring the intuition into our life, we have to think of it in a larger sense. So I'm going to read just a little bit of this. No signal. Okay. Was it? The F key. Control F. Function. Wait a second. It's a different function F7. Function F7. Okay. Duplicate. Duplicate. Is that it? Oh, wait a second. Why doesn't it duplicate? All right. Hopefully, yes. Oh, but it's rather large, isn't it? We have a little bit of an issue here, so I think I better bring this down. Is that a little better? Okay. All right. Let's see what Master DK says about the intuition, and then I will try to relate some of the planets to the different aspects of the intuition as he describes it. All right. The intuition is not a welling forth of love to people, and therefore an understanding of them. Much that is called the intuition is recognition of similarities and the possession of a clear analytical mind. Have I got my point? Yes. All right, so a lot of experience with people will give us what is oftentimes called intuition. Intelligent people who have lived in the world for some time and who have experienced much and who have contacted many other people can usually sum up with facility the problems and dispositions of others provided they are interested. This they must not, however, confound with intuition. So, admittedly, this particular description of the not intuition is what we often call intuition, because we have a good feeling for who people are. They don't have to tell us so much. We can size it up. We can see because we have experience with people. That's not intuition. Okay, by the time he's finished telling us what it's not, there won't be much left except everything. Okay, the intuition has no relation to psychism, either higher or lower. The seeing of a vision, the hearing of a voice of the silence, a pleased reaction to teaching of any kind, does not infer the functioning of the intuition. It is not only the seeing of symbols, for that is a special sort of perception and the capacity to tune in on the universal mind upon that layer of its activity which produces the pattern forms on which all etheric bodies are based. In other words, what he's saying here is that the higher mind per se is not the intuition. The intuition is still something higher, because on that high level of the mental plane and in the lower part of what we call the spiritual triad, let's see where our map is here. Have I got a map? Yeah, this is the map, The intuition is not particularly this level of the higher mind, where the capacity to tune in on symbols, etc., through the lowest part of the spiritual triad is found. It's something higher still. It really concerns the cosmic ethers altogether. Okay, it is not intelligent psychology and a loving desire to help. That emanates from the interplay of a personality governed by a strong soul orientation and the group conscious soul. In other words, the intuition is not particularly found upon the soul level, although the soul expresses and reflects it. It's something higher still. So when we're talking about getting the real intuition into our chart, into our life, it's a very high thing. And a lot of us will have to be satisfied with a bit less than that, which would still be good, you know, still be good compared to what we usually do, if you're like me. Okay. All right. Moving on. And here is his definition. For you Virgos, I'm going to get rid of the paragraph marks. Okay. Intuition is the synthetic understanding which is the prerogative of the soul. And remember that the true soul is the spiritual triad. In other words, the shroud of the soul is your causal body, is your egoic lotus, but that's not the real soul. That's not your real consciousness. The spiritual triad is that. Well, you know, really, the real soul is the monad. But okay, that's another point. Intuition is the synthetic understanding which is the prerogative of the soul, and it only becomes possible when the soul on its own level, it's got to do something too, is reaching in two directions, towards the monad and towards the integrated and perhaps even if only temporarily coordinated and at one personality. So, you know, the soul is Janus, it has two heads, it's the two-headed God, it looks in two directions, it looks towards the monad, it looks towards the personality, and only when it is doing so, just like hierarchy right now is facing humanity and facing Shambhala at the same time, only then can the intuition really be activated. It is the first indication of a deeply subjective unification which will find its consummation at the third initiation. So basically he's telling us that we're not really becoming intuitive until the third initiation, but we can begin to tend in that direction. So that could concern many people who are here, who are striving towards that point of illumination, which we call the enlightenment or the third initiation. So I would say that, you know, from the time the second initiation is at least in sight, people can begin to be intuitive in the higher sense that Master DK is talking about. Now, here is a beautiful definition. Intuition is a comprehensive grip of the principle of universality. A comprehensive grip of the principle of universality, and when it is functioning, there is, momentarily at least, a complete loss of the sense of separateness. Okay. A complete loss of the sense of separateness. At its highest point, this is getting very big now, it is known as that universal love, which has no relation to sentiment or to the affectional reaction, liking and disliking, right? But is predominantly in the nature of an identification with all beings. Now, that really says it. That's a fantastic, that's wonderful. The comprehensive grip of the principle of universality, ending of separateness, universal love, and identification with all beings. Now, I think those of us who are astrologers can already begin to think how the planets that I mentioned begin to tie in to this definition. Now, would you like some of this in your life? Well, that's a hearty response. Okay. Then only is the divine germ seen as latent in all forms. What is the divine germ? It's the seed of spirit itself. It's the volatile essence. It is the monad. Okay. Then, when that happens, the true spirit can be revealed. Intuition is light itself. And when it is functioning, the world is seen as light, and the light bodies of all forms become gradually apparent. So when the Christ said, I am the light of the world, and the Buddha, who was the Lord of Light, said something equivalent, they meant that they identified as light. This brings with it the ability to contact the light center in all forms, and thus again, an essential relationship is established, and the sense of superiority and separateness recedes into the background. So you begin to ask yourself, can selfish people be intuitive? They can be psychic, but can they be intuitive? Not really possible, is it? So to the degree to which we don't have heart, to which we are selfish, to which we are egocentric, is the degree to which we block our intuition. So can we use our horoscope to overcome egoism and the lower personality reactions? I would think we can. Okay. Intuition, therefore, brings with it the appearance of three qualities. And let's see how we're doing here. Illumination is the first. Immediately you think of the transfiguration initiation, which is the beginning of the true intuitive process. It's called, by many, the initiation of the illumination. By illumination, I do not mean the light in the head. That's incidental, phenomenal, and many truly intuitive people are entirely unaware of this light, but they probably have it. The light to which I refer is that which irradiates the capital way, and that's the higher way, the way of higher evolution. It is the light of intellect, which is not the same as being intellectual. Intellect is that which allows you to penetrate knowingly any field of experience and know immediately what it is without reasoning. That's the true Neoplatonic intellect. Okay. Which really means that which illumines the mind and which can reflect itself in the mental apparatus which is held steady in the light. So it's a higher light. The intellect is a higher light. This is the light of the world. Which sign of the zodiac is the light of the world? Does anybody remember? I know the page number. It's on page 330. The light of the world. Is it Pisces? We just meditated on that. Someone do a little research and let me know, all right? All right. This is the light of the world, a reality which is eternally existent, but which can be discovered only when the individual interior light is recognized as such. You know, this is what DK says, in that light we shall see light. Okay. This is the light of the ages which shineth evermore until the day be with us. This is a very high light, bringing us on the higher path. The type of illumination he's talking about here is not just getting a bright idea. Okay? All right. Which shineth evermore until the day be with us. What is the day be with us? It is Pisces. Okay. Yeah, right. The light of the world. Okay. He says beautiful things about Pisces. Right. What does he say there? Do you have it? It ends forever the darkness of matter. Okay, all right. Okay, when you're going to speak, yeah, we'll have to switch you on when that happens. Okay, this shineth evermore until the day be with us. What is the day be with us? It's the day of monadic realization when you've made your complete cycle down into the 5 lower worlds and you come back. That's the microcosmic day be with us. There's also a planetary day be with us and a solar systemic. It's the day of consummation. Okay, illumination. The intuition is therefore the recognition in oneself, not theoretically but as a fact, in one's experience of one's complete identification with the universal mind, of one's constituting a part of the great world life, and of one's participation in the eternal, persisting existence. It's all about identification, isn't it? And what about Aquarius with respect to inducing the intuition? I think this age of Aquarius, with its sense of universality, its connection with the Great Bear and the universal mind, will be an opening to the group of the great intuition. Would we like this in our life? Or does this seem just a little bit inaccessible? By the end of this weekend, don't worry. All right. Understanding is the next quality of the intuition. Illumination, understanding. This must be appreciated in the literal sense as that which stands under the totality of forms. So the power of abstraction is very strong in understanding. You know that you are beneath everything which seems to be obvious. You have gone through the yoga of pratyahara, the 5th, I think it is, the 5th means of yoga. You have withdrawn, and you can stand below all the phenomenal world that presents itself to you. Okay, that which stands under the totality of forms, it connotes the power of recession. That's very interesting. It means to pull back. Precision, recession, or the capacity to withdraw from one's age-long identification with form life. I mean, how can you be identified with all life unless you can disidentify with form? And immediately we know Neptune is going to bring this to us, isn't it? It's going to be one of the planets I mentioned, which is very important in abstracting from identification with form life. Or Neptune will lead you into delusion. But we assume that people who are here at this stage of development can use the planets in a positive sense. And that's what I want to say. You don't come to an astrologer when you're a disciple and say, what's going to happen to me? You don't do that. You say, how can I use these divine potencies according to my will and my alignment with the soul to carry out my part in the divine plan? How can I use what's there to the best possible advantage? That's what you do. The what's happening to me is personality astrology. I mean, we're always a little interested, but it should be framed like this. What's happening to my instrument instead of the me? You know what I mean? We always identify so often with the instrument, and we think that that's us. It's not. Okay, so I would like to point out that this withdrawal is comparatively easy for those who have much of the first-rate quality in them. The problem is to withdraw in the esoteric sense, but to avoid at the same time the sense of separateness, of isolation, and of superiority. And that's a fine distinction, isn't it? Because people can, they can turn themselves off to all kinds of sensitivity. It's apparently a kind of withdrawal. It's apparently a kind of standing back, but it's not what he's looking for. He wants us to keep the love active even as we withdraw from form. Neptune will give us that. Pluto will also help a little. Saturn can join as well. Okay. So it is easy for first-rate people to resist the tendency to identify themselves with others. How many of you used to be like that? You're really good. Okay. Okay. To have true understanding involves an increased ability to love all beings and yet, at the same time, to preserve personality detachment. That's the big second-rate thing. To love all beings and still have personality detachment. We're working on it, right? It's a work in progress. This detachment can be so easily founded on the inability to love, in a selfish concern for one's own comfort, physical, mental, or spiritual, and above all, emotional. First-rate people dread emotion and despise it, but sometimes they have to swing into an emotional condition before they can use emotional sensitivity in the right manner. How many here think you're first-rate souls? Okay. Wow, we've got a bunch of second rays here, huh? Or just the timid folk. Anyway, how many feel that you are first-rate monads, but don't really know? But you have that, something sweeps over you that tells you that you really are. All right, so a bunch of second rays. All right, we don't have this problem. Oh, maybe someone? Okay. All right, onward. So what do we have? Illumination and understanding, and naturally, the sign Pisces is very connected with understanding. It really literally rules the feet and the ability to stand back and be spiritually beneath all phenomena. Understanding involves contact with life as an integrated personality, plus egoic reaction to the group purposes and plans. It connotes personality-soul unification under Venus, exalted in Pisces, wide experience, and a rapid activity of the indwelling Christ principle. It sounds like a pretty tall order. You know the old biblical saying, first beget ye understanding. Okay, illumination, understanding, on its way to illumination. And where the reasoning to an understanding, it says, intuitional understanding is always spontaneous. Where the reasoning to an understanding enters, it is not the activity of the intuition. That's a very important discrimination. Reasoning is good. Reasoning is illuminating. Reasoning is necessary. Saturn and Mercury together are necessary, but intuition is spontaneous. So we have to overcome the sense of time and space and move towards a point if we are going to be able to achieve this intuition. And the final point is love. Okay, we have illumination, we have understanding, and the third quality of the intuition is love. As earlier said, this is not affectionate sentiment or the possession of a loving disposition. These two aspects are incidental and sequential. They come as a result of the intuition. When the intuition is developed, both affection and the possession of a spirit of loving outgo will necessarily, in their pure form, be demonstrated, but that which produces these is something much more deep and comprehensive. In other words, aiming at being loving, it's fine, okay. Aiming at being outgoing and helpful is fine, okay. But if the real intuition exists, these things will automatically be part of our expression. So something far deeper is behind these normally perceived indications of love. It is, and this deeper thing is, It is that synthetic, inclusive grasp of the life and needs of all beings. I have chosen these two words with intent. Synthetic, inclusive grasp of the life and needs of all beings. Again, based upon identification. And notice, it's not, the Buddhists say, peace to all beings, all sentient beings. We're not just talking people here. We're talking about the other kingdoms of nature as well, are we not? Okay. It is that synthetic inclusive grasp which it is the high prerogative of a divine Son of God to operate. And by the divine Son of God, it's truly the monad, truly the spirit. It negates all that builds barriers, makes criticism, and produces separation. It overcomes the lower Saturn, it overcomes the lower Mercury. The true intuition negates all tendencies towards separatism. Being of the intellectual type, which the modern disciple is, the mind is heavy, the mind is critical. What are you going to do? We have to somehow enter into the soul field and then beyond we have to enter into this Venusian, Jupiterian, Neptunian field in order to overcome these lower Martian, Mercurian, Saturnian tendencies. Okay, it sees no distinction, even when it appreciates need. It has what's called, DK has a beautiful phrase, he says, substitute for criticism the loving recognition of limitation. You know how easy it is to criticize, right? But the loving recognition of limitation should be substituted for that. So, it sees no distinction even when it appreciates need, and it produces in the one who loves as a soul immediate identification with that which is love. So immediately we see this whole thing about intuition. It's all about oneness, universality, non-separativeness, overcoming of barriers, overcoming of boundaries, while still recognizing them, but overcoming them in essence. Okay, now the astrological connections that we can make with these particular qualities. I mean, after describing this, does anybody feel particularly intuitive? I'm wondering, because DK has set the mark very high for what real intuition may be. All the things that we usually rate as the sign of the intuitive person are simply the byproducts of being truly intuitive, of having this larger perspective. Okay, so we hope we can bring the larger perspective into our astrological charts this weekend. Do we care to do that, or do we just want to solve our personal problems? I mean, solving personal problems is nice, isn't it? I mean, it's okay. Because if the person is out of whack, then it's hard to, be the soul. At the same time, something higher is being demanded of us at this time, perhaps. Okay. Now, yes, he goes on, but it's a marvelous book, and I suggest that we read it. Okay. And reread it, and apply it, because maybe there are a few of us still who are somewhat affected by glamour. A few. I'm not naming names here. Okay. Or illusion, even, Does anybody admit to having illusions? Yeah, I guess. I think you can get a few that will admit to having illusions where it's very few admit to having glamours. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at this from the astrological perspective. I identified 5 planets. Now, you can come up with other planets as well that have a lot to do with intuition, but let's say Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, and Uranus. Of course, even the Earth, which is the second-ray soul, will have its own layer of intuition and so forth. But when we are looking at our horoscopes, we want to know, what can we draw from this particular planet to activate a certain quality of intuition in our life, according to how that planet is placed in our chart, by house position, by sign position, by aspect. How can we, because, if we don't invoke the intuition, well, we might have a great idea in the shower or something, but it's not going to become a constant stream from the higher planes. Remember what he says about the fourth-ray artist of the future. The artist will particularly meditate to the point of excruciating pain until the light breaks forth. And they will be able to sustain this type of meditation until the higher worlds enter their consciousness. It won't just be a sudden fling of emotion or a sudden inspiration from the astral body. Art will be something entirely different. It will depend on very steady, profound meditation. Vulcan will help, Taurus will help, other fourth ray indicators will help. A great steadiness will be required of the meditator on the fourth ray in the future. Okay, so Mercury, apparently a fourth ray planet. At least we think it is with respect to its soul nature. It probably has a lot of third ray connected with it, certainly a lot of fifth ray, and maybe the third ray is the most powerful planet for Mercury. It relates to the previous solar system. Anyway, Mercury is one of the major rulers of the Buddhic plane. By the Buddhic plane, this is what we're meaning here, the intuitional plane, the Buddhic plane, the fourth cosmic ether, the plane of at-one-ment, the plane of harmony, it is also called. The whole focus of this week's conference, etc., is this plane, and how to get that into our individual group lives and into the life of humanity. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. So, think about your Mercury. Everybody has your chart, and for those who don't have your chart yet and don't have your chart in your memory, we're going to do our best during the break to generate a type of chart for you. It may not be the chart that everybody else has, but by tomorrow you'll have the chart that everybody else has as well. Who so far does not have their charts? Oh yeah, okay. But some of us remember our charts, don't we? Okay, all right. So Mercury rules the Buddhic plane, and DK has an expression for it, transcendental mind. It's a marvelous term because it means Mercury is the fivefold mind. It's the concrete mind, the son of mind, the abstract mind, the transcendental mind, and the atmic mind. So Mercury goes all the way from the lower mental plane all the way to the plane of Atma. But transcendental mind, let's say it's Buddhic mind, and it allows this vast perception of connections between things, the flashing forth of the light. Do you want to bring that flashing forth into your life? So, boom, bing, boom, boom. Did you see that movie recently? It's called, what's it called? I'm having an Alzheimer's moment. It's called, it's a guy who takes this pill, Invincible or Limitless, that's it. Maybe it's Neptune and Mercury, Uranus together. Anyway, he's firing, with a 4-digit IQ. And all the connections are together. You see a totally brilliant representation of Mercury in what he does. Trouble is, there is the morning after syndrome. Okay. Anyway, transcendental mind. It's called the star of conflict, and it leads to the resolution of conflict into harmony. And the way the higher Mercury is for me, and what I'd like to have in my life when I think of pure reason, is I call it this, the infallible comprehension of all relationships. The infallible comprehension of all relationships. I'd like to know exactly how everything is related to everything else, and reciprocally, and there would be lines of light and illumination between every content of my consciousness. And after all of us together are only contents of each other's consciousness, aren't we? There's nothing but contents of consciousness. The whole universe is a content of consciousness. Okay, the revelation of truth-filled connection between all variables. This is higher Mercury. I'm not just talking about the ability to think, because we need that too. But this is a sudden coalescing of relationships all seen as one. This is higher Mercury. This is intuitive Mercury, the star of intuition. Oftentimes planets are called stars. Okay. It's particularly associated with the mind of God, and it is the planet most connected with the quality of what's called pure reason or inclusive reason, which is the great objective of those upon the second ray, especially once they've transcended the emotional phase. So you don't have to think about it, you see it with perfect, luminous intelligence, instantaneously, spontaneously. There's no Saturn in it in this particular case. There's no sequence in it, no sequentiality. There is a sudden illumination. We can cultivate that. We can cultivate that. Now, you know what? I suppose we have the air conditioning off because of sound. Okay, we could get the air conditioning because after all, I'm talking. That's a lot of hot air. We need air conditioning. Okay. Now, just get into a meditative moment just for a second. Which means you look like you're meditating, okay? Yes, that's right. Uncross the legs. You know how to do it. I once got caught in the Masonic Lodge with my legs crossed. Whoa, it was an excruciating moment. Now think about Mercury in your life. You know, identify its position, its sign, how this ability to see things in relation and suddenly works for you, how you might cultivate it. Think about Mercury in your life. You know, we live a certain number of hours every day in a conscious way, and those hours are taken up by different planetary functions. We emphasize some, we de-emphasize others. What is the highest way for you in which Mercury functions? Do you find the flashing forth of the intuition so that you have this infallible comprehension of relationships without having to necessarily reason about it? And this is the main point, and this is what I'm trying to get across here. What are the gifts of these 5 planets to you? Dane Rudyard had a marvelous book called The Gifts of the Spirit, and that's how we're looking at these different planets. How does Mercury gift you? With what quality realizations does it gift you? Let's just be quiet for a few moments and see if we can get a fix on how Mercury works for us. Now, you may just have an impression about this, but the more you study the sign in which Mercury is found and its house position or its position on the angles, the more you discover the relationships that Mercury has, you'll be able to access what for you is a still higher function of Mercury than you have been able thus far to access. This is invocative astrology. The great divine powers exist. They are everywhere ambient. It's a question of being able to tune in on them and draw them in for an enhancement of their function in our energy system and our consciousness. Now, very few people approach astrology that way. They just want to know what's happening. But the active will to invoke the ambient energy is not present. All right, let's go on. I have a little bit of time, so I'm going to cover these other planets. Venus is in a way, well, is it really a ruler of the intuition? In a sense, it is. It usually is considered as ruling the realm of higher mind, and especially these 2 subplanes. But, interestingly, Venus is a planetary logos who is now working Buddhically just the way our planetary logos is struggling to work Buddhically or intuitively. Venus works intuitively. And his work on the cosmic astral plane, Venus's work, involves the sixth level. The sixth level, well, you know, wait a second. Let's see if I can find the cosmic astral plane here. Okay. Oh, it's around. Venus is working on this level of the cosmic astral plane, and our planetary logos is working on this level. Just imagine, you know, lines of demarcation. We have not yet achieved the Buddhic realization that Venus has, so it has a slightly Buddhic quality, but there's more to it because it is the connector between the intuition and the astral world. It's Kamamanis. So it's normally considered a great fifth-ray planet, but not just a fifth ray. It may have a fifth-ray soul. Its monad is kind of a, I believe, a sixth-ray, second-ray monad, ultimately a second-ray monad, but for the moment a sixth-ray monad. At least that's the sub-ray. And it may have, when we're talking about harmony, Venus is that artistic planet which somehow involves the harmony aspect of the fourth ray, not the conflict side of it. It rules, as we were implying before, and this is so important in the life of all of us, the union of heart and mind. That's what this morning's meditation was all about, the union of heart and mind. To face life with the open heart and the illumined mind. And they are not just separate, as in a Gemini situation, they are fused. They're not on and off, heart now, mind later. They are together all the time. That would be a big achievement, if we could. It rules the first part of the Rainbow Bridge, which is the fusion of the soul and personality. And then, you know, a great fourth-ray initiate, John Keats, he was, you know, in his personality sense, he was kind of a medical worker, but inwardly he was a fourth-ray soul, I'm pretty sure. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. It's a great fourth-ray statement. But somehow, if the factor of beauty is intense enough in your life, the intuition will also be present. The knowingness of things will also be present. The truth of things will also be present. So if you immerse yourself in beauty, you just know things that you didn't know before you were immersed in the beauty. You've seen that sometimes, haven't you? You've gone to a marvelous movie. You know, it's just so terribly moving. You know, you just feel huge depths, and you just know things because being in the presence of beauty, or at a great concert, or an art exhibit, or in nature, etc., all those fourth-ray things, you know in a deeper way because you've been in the beauty. And that's the way Venus is helping us to access the intuition. It is, there's a great fourth-ray mantra, but I'm just going to give a little part of it. Truth. There is a type of truth which unity reveals, and unity is brought to us by Venus. It is a unifying planet. Of course, you know, every planet is separative on the lower levels of its expression, but we're talking about how we should use it now. And there's a phrase that says, let the beauty of the inner light reveal the one. The beauty of the inner light reveals the one. So beauty, inner light, and revealed oneness. These are the gifts of Venus. It's very close to the intuition because in the sense of universality and oneness, which is the key factor of intuition, Venus leads us there. Neptune is a higher turn of the octave, you know, and will lead us even beyond. You know, it's very interesting. You know, when you look, you know, little digression, very quick. Uranus and Mercury are related just the way Neptune and Venus are related. Mercury ends up dissolving into Uranus, and Venus ends up dissolving into Neptune in the later days. So they have similar qualities. DK talks about the synthesizing planets, etc. Venus is connected, okay, the intuition considered as that which the solar angel knows, and the infusion of that knowledge into the mind. Now, the solar angel, that tutelary deity that supervises our development for millions of years, knows a lot. That solar angel was a human being in an earlier Mahamanvantara, in an earlier solar system. So the solar angel is from the heart of the sun. That solar angel knows intuitively what God, the solar logos, wants. and then we get that infusion. So that's a type of intuition for us as well. And the solar angel is not just found, oops, wrong plane. All right. The solar angel is not just found on the higher mental plane. The solar angel is a Buddhic being and dwells within the cosmic ethers. So when we access the downflow of the solar angel, we are accessing intuition because it is a Buddhic being. Okay. Venus is connected with both light and love, as they demonstrate through intuition. Remember, light, illumination, and love. So there we have a factor. Whereas Mercury is more with illumination, more, and to a degree with understanding. So think for a moment about Venus in your life. Think about Venus. You'll do more thinking about this because when you work with your teams and all that, we'll really get into it. But just to get it started, what is the highest way that Venus functions for you? What are the gifts of Venus to you? Think about this factor of beauty and truth together, the gifts of Venus to you. Moments of truth and beauty, beauty and truth. Reflecting, Sirius, the heart of the sun, and Venus. These are the seeds of profound meditations. You know, all we can do is just, I'm very strict about time, so I'm going to be sure that I end on time. But keep that, take it home and say, what is the gift of this planet to me? What is the gift? Really, the higher gift. And see if you can detect it in your life and see if it's of a good quality. That's a Venus word, isn't it? Soul is the quality of life, Venus, soul. Okay, Jupiter, another ruler of the Buddhic plane. Not only a ruler of the Buddhic plane, but a ruler of the monadic plane. So it's a great second-rate planet, but, he sits on Mount Olympus and he throws thunderbolts. It's not a very second-rate thing to do. So maybe there's a few other, he rules, pomp and circumstance, great ceremonial processions, a lot of seventh ray, and throwing those thunderbolts, you got to wonder, pretty big planet there. So maybe we have some first ray. Now, what does Jupiter do in terms of intuition? It embraces in wholeness all that comes to light via Mercury. The two rulers of the mutable cross, Jupiter and Mercury. It embraces in, whenever you think of wholeness, that's Jupiter. It's really a hugely integrative planet. It almost is like Mercury effervesces into Jupiter. When Mercury becomes incandescent enough, it becomes the whole. So there's a real strong relationship between those two. Almost think of Ganymede, the cupbearer, and rising towards Jupiter. Of course, the expansion of consciousness, we call it that, the broadening of our perspective. And it is the growth and expansion of your soul body. We're familiar with those ideas on the higher mental plane. Some people have now that's one place you don't want to lose weight in your causal body. Know what I mean? It's okay to have a big causal body. You know what I mean? But don't need to go on any kind of qualitative diet. Eat a lot of quality. It's good for you. All right. It is a planet of great generality and abstraction, and it sees the large picture, and it's really connected with that quality we call understanding. Because if you see things in a big enough picture, you can really stand back from all the particulars of all the phenomena, and you can say, in general, it's like this, and I'm embracing it, I'm holding it, I'm under it. So that's why it's a philosophical planet. You know how philosophers are. They love to pull back and abstract and see things in the larger perspective and gain understanding. Jupiter, Sagittarius, philosophy goes together. So there's great inclusivity here, great universality here, and there is the sense not only of seeing it, but participating in it. I grow, I expand, I am more, until you finally get the sense of being the whole world. I'm everything. Jupiter leads to that, as one horizon recedes after another. Okay. So ultimately, Jupiter is the perspective of the monad itself because it rules the monadic plane. Very briefly, this plane here, this is ruled by Jupiter. The divine ideal is found there, the big rounded O of Jupiter, which is a first ray expression in a second ray solar system. The big O, that's Jupiter. And we're all trying to become spheres, aren't we? We will not be forever what Master Morya calls the bipeds. There are other ways to locomote, you know, other ways to get around. Okay. So the big O sounds, and what about Jupiter in your life? We all like Jupiter. What will Jupiter bring us, you know? Well, too much weight, okay, you know, but many other things. So it rules the heart center. You know, and whereas Neptune is going to be ruling the heart and the head center. See, so all of these chakras that I mentioned have a particular connection with these planets. So think about Jupiter in your life, very briefly. What is it? What does it gift? What is the gift? You know, listen to certain kind of music, which is ruled by certain planets. And you know, Edward Elgar, somehow he really was Jupiterian. I don't know if it was in his chart, but there was that whole pomp and circumstance thing that everybody, you know, when you're graduating onto the next thing, they play pomp and circumstance. It's a great processional towards the future. That's totally Jupiter. And when you hear the Nimrod variations by Elgar, Enigma variations, but Nimrod is one of them. We'll hear that this weekend. It's just expansive. The love expands hugely. So Jupiter, you know, is not only conceit on the personality level, it is great soul inclusiveness in a higher sense. Does Jupiter give you gifts? Did you ever feel when you ran into Master DK's teaching that you were getting a Jupiterian gift? Did your consciousness expand accordingly? Or was it all mentation? Or was there some greater sense of participation in the whole? I think so. All right, so now that I've answered that for you, good. All right, Neptune, and very few minutes remain. A great sixth-ray, second-ray planet. It rules the dissolution of boundaries between the dense physical body and the etheric body of the planetary logos, and solar logos for that matter. In other words, here's the realm of death, this is where we live. Here's the realm of life, this is where we don't live. Okay? Now Neptune, basically, yeah, it dissolves this first boundary to an extent that Venus does a lot of that. But if you want to get into the cosmic ethers, we need, which are ruled by Neptune, the very first stop is ruled by Neptune, this dissolves this big boundary here between the higher mental plane and the Buddhic plane. Now boundaries are always getting in the way, you know. It's hard to identify with everything when you're getting stuck with boundaries. Neptune comes along, and if it doesn't produce confusion for, you know, in our earlier life, it will produce unification later through the dissolution of boundaries. When Madame Blavatsky says there's a boundless, immutable principle, it's a very Neptunian statement. It's like saying Neptune is the planet of homogeneity. It homogenizes everything. So it is connected particularly with that quality of the intuition called universal love. It's a higher octave, in a way, than Jupiter. It's like Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. It makes us permeable to all the higher energies. You know, usually we're so dense, so thick, that good stuff can't get through. But every once in a while, a nice Neptunian energy comes along and percolates all the beautiful things that exist in the higher world, sensitizing us through suffering. If you suffer enough, you become sensitive enough to realize the higher worlds in you. So it's a sensitizing planet leading to identification with all beings. You know the old story, like Ramakrishna's crossing the river. Some master's hitting the slave on the other side. The slave is screaming, and Ramakrishna says, "Who's beating me? Who's beating me?" Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me. That's Neptune. It's the U. It's the U of AUM. It's not the O. It's much more authentic in a way. Jupiter is the O. It's derivative. But AUM is foundational, and Neptune is the big, ooh, Neptune. It's the god of music, which harmonizes all things. Plane of harmony, Neptune. All right. And I'm sure Neptune brings gifts to your life. You can think about them later over a glass of wine, which is also ruled by Neptune. Finally, Uranus, very different. It's a seventh-ray planet, but it's got a huge first ray. It's the highest first-ray planet there is. The third and fifth ray have to be included. And Uranus is the A of AUM. Saturn is the M. Neptune is the U. Uranus is the A of God the Father. Uranus is, here's how I try to describe it, the sudden intrusion into the life and consciousness of that which was completely unexpected and untouched, the unimagined and unthought. You know, we have a big veil dropped over us, all kinds of things are going on, we're living on the tiniest bottom little rind of the universe, and every once in a while things open up and the rind cracks and new things come in an electric, sudden, and, well, look at the world today. Uranus and Aries. Uranus, major first-ray planet. Aries, major first-ray sign. The rind is cracking. Pluto, square. So it is the flash that reveals all that was hidden by the night sky. You've seen that too, right? Everything's darkness. Lightning goes, and hey, look at all that. I never saw that before. That's Uranus. So it is, I'd like to call it archetypal invasion. The invasion of, you know, Jung thought that was a pretty bad thing to happen because people just got swept away and they thought they were these big archetypes. But it's not bad to have moderated archetypal, invasion. It's good. The unexpected intrusion into life of the truly archetypal realm, it comes from the logoic plane. That's Uranus. And that's the true world of causes, where Uranus is in the sea of fire, where the monad really hangs out after it drops its body. You know, we're all in the sun. We're all in the sea of fire. Ultimately, we'll find ourselves there. And that comes in like intuition, too. I never thought of that. Brilliant new idea. Wonderful invention. Oh, now our life is totally revolutionized. That's intuition, too. Remember what I said. Considered in this way, intuition is not just that which comes from the Buddhic plane, but involves all the cosmic ethers and the input of all the cosmic ethers called intuition in different ways. All right, that's it. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Okay, so we're aiming high. We're not just doing the astrology of the personality. We're doing the astrology of divine gifts from the higher realms brought into our life so we become divine beings. That's a stretch, and it means we have to stop identifying with what you see in the mirror, which is hard. You know what I mean? How am I looking today? All right. If I can look at my causal body, I'll give you a better answer.